In Volusia County, the Sheriff's Office, in coordination with the FBI, has arrested dozens of individuals connected to the Mongols Motorcycle Club as part of a major statewide investigation. According to the sheriff, this case stems from an incident that took place during Florida's well-known Bike Week and has since grown into one of the most significant law enforcement operations in recent state history. A violent confrontation sparks a statewide response. What began as an ordinary Saturday during Bike Week in New Smyrna Beach quickly escalated into a public emergency. At the racetrack gas station on State Road 44, a location popular with bikers, tourists, and families, a brief altercation between two groups erupted into violence. Within seconds, shouting turned into gunfire. Bystanders scrambled for safety. Families and motorcyclists took cover or fled the scene. 2 individuals were shot but survived. By nightfall, law enforcement agencies across Florida were mobilizing for a large-scale investigation. This effort would soon be known as Operation Mongolian Beef, a name that belied the seriousness of the response. Why the March 8th incident matters. The shooting occurred in broad daylight at a family-friendly location during a major public event. What initially appeared to be a spontaneous clash revealed deeper problems tied to organized crime. Police quickly arrested 41-year-old Clinton Neal Walker on initial charges related to the shooting, but the situation soon proved to be more complex. Investigators were left with pressing questions. Who else was involved? How many people fired weapons? What sparked the conflict? To answer these, detectives turned to video surveillance, eyewitness accounts, and cell phone recordings. The evidence uncovered pointed to something far more extensive than a local dispute, from local incident to multi-county investigation. As evidence mounted, it became clear that this was not an isolated event. The confrontation was part of a broader network involving organized motorcycle gang members. Surveillance footage, license plate data, and public tips revealed a wider web of involvement across Florida and beyond. Realizing the scale, local authorities called in the FBI, and together they launched a coordinated operation aimed at dismantling the group involved. On July 2nd, 2025, teams carried out simultaneous raids across multiple counties and into another state. The results: 28 individuals arrested, 31 total arrest warrants issued, 3 suspects still at large at the time of the announcement. Rather than pursuing individual charges for each act of violence, law enforcement used a rarely applied statute: aggravated rioting under Florida law. What is aggravated rioting and why it was used? Florida's aggravated rioting statute, section 870.01, allows prosecutors to charge individuals involved in a violent group disturbance without proving who fired each shot. This law is especially valuable in chaotic incidents involving many participants, weapons, and incomplete evidence. To file aggravated rioting charges, prosecutors must prove at least 3 people acted together in violent, disorderly conduct. 1 or more of the following occurred. 25 or more participants. Use or display of deadly weapons. Serious injury to an uninvolved bystander. Conviction under this second-degree felony can result in up to 15 years in prison. In a case like the March 8th shooting, where dozens of people were involved and the scene was chaotic, this approach enables the justice system to hold participants accountable, even if specific actions can't be attributed to each individual. Inside Operation Mongolian Beef, the raids. The raids were the result of months of strategic planning. At dawn on July 2nd, law enforcement executed 14 search warrants simultaneously. The most high-profile target was the Mongols Motorcycle Clubhouse in Edgewater, believed to be central to the group's activities. Additional raids took place at homes and properties across Volusia County. 4. Brevard County 3, Miami-Dade County 2, Polk County 2, Palm Beach County 1. A warrant was also executed in Chesterfield County, Virginia, highlighting the group's interstate connections. The operation was a joint effort led by the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and involved multiple FBI field offices: Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami, Richmond, Newark, Columbia, and Charlotte. U.S. Marshals Service, Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida, numerous local and state law enforcement agencies. Authorities emphasized that the objective was not just to punish past crimes, but to prevent future violence, particularly during large-scale public events, like Bike Week. What was seized? Weapons, drugs, and cash. The raids uncovered a significant amount of contraband, including 38 handguns, 15 long guns, including rifles and shotguns, $10,000 in cash, illegal drugs, marijuana, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. Many of the firearms were modified or illegally owned. Each weapon is being examined for potential links to the March 8th shooting. In addition to firearms, investigators collected electronic devices and communications records that could help place suspects at the scene. These seizures are critical to the prosecution strategy. In an aggravated rioting case, the goal is to show organized participation, not necessarily who pulled the trigger. Weapons, locations, and communications can all support that argument. A message to the community and to other gangs. Law enforcement leaders made it clear this was not just a reaction to one event. It was part of a broader strategy to break the cycle of violence tied to organized motorcycle gangs. By removing weapons and disrupting operations, officials aimed to prevent future incidents like the one in New Smyrna Beach. They also sent a public message to rival gangs and potential offenders. Violent confrontations in public places will trigger massive coordinated responses involving multiple agencies across jurisdictions. The investigation continues. Despite the scale of Operation Mongolian Beef, officials stated that the case is still active. Several suspects remain at large, and further charges may be filed as evidence is processed. For the community, the operation represents both a warning and a reassurance. Law enforcement agencies are working together at every level to confront organized criminal activity with speed and precision. Authorities emphasized that the violence on March 8th was not the result of actions by just one or two individuals. Instead, it represented a coordinated act that posed a serious risk to the public. By charging individuals under Florida's aggravated rioting statute, prosecutors aim to hold entire groups accountable when violence occurs as part of organized activity, especially in cases involving motorcycle clubs, where members often act as a unit and may shield one another from prosecution. At a press conference, officials made it clear this operation was not just about punishing past behavior. It was about setting a precedent, a warning that if a group brings public violence into a community, the entire group could face serious legal consequences. For Florida, this is a bold legal strategy. Now it will be up to the courts to determine how effectively this rarely used law can be applied to such a complex case. The rivalry behind the shootout. As the investigation into the March 8th shooting progressed, it became clear that the violence was not random. According to law enforcement, the confrontation involved members of two rival motorcycle clubs, the Mongols Motorcycle Club and the Warlocks Motorcycle Club. These are not recreational riding clubs. Both groups have long histories, strong reputations, and a well-documented history of conflict. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood confirmed at the July 2nd press briefing that the violence was rooted in long-standing tensions between the Mongols and Warlocks. The March 8th shooting was not sparked by a personal dispute. It was the latest chapter in an ongoing rivalry, one that had already drawn attention from law enforcement. In 2024, members of both clubs were involved in another violent incident in Titusville, Florida, near the intersection of U.S. Highway 1 and State Road 50. That event resulted in multiple arrests and served as an early warning of escalating hostilities. Sheriff Chitwood referenced that prior incident to underscore a pattern. These clashes are recurring, especially during high-profile events like Bike Week, when members from multiple chapters gather in one location. The risk is clear. When rival gangs, many of them armed, confront each other in public, the danger to bystanders rises dramatically. This context explains the urgency behind law enforcement's swift and coordinated response following the new Smyrna Beach shootout. More than just an arrest operation. Operation Mongolian Beef was never just about one incident or one arrest. Authorities aimed to break the cycle of organized violence between rival gangs. The goal was to send a strong message to both the Mongols and the Warlocks, and to the public, that violent gang activity would be met with a unified and overwhelming law enforcement response. Arrests and leadership links. On July 2, 2025, authorities announced the full scope of their enforcement action. A total of 31 individuals were charged in connection with the March 8th shooting. By the time of the press conference, 28 suspects were already in custody, while 3 remained at large. While many personal details remain confidential due to ongoing investigations, officials revealed that the president of the Mongols Motorcycle Club's Volusia County chapter was among those arrested. This indicated that the violence may not have been the work of a few rogue members, but rather an act supported, or at least enabled, by leadership. Arrests were made in several Florida counties, including Volusia, Brevard, Miami-Dade, Polk, and Palm Beach, and one suspect was apprehended in Chesterfield County, Virginia, confirming the operation's interstate scope. Authorities stated that the suspects include both direct participants in the violence and supporting individuals who helped plan, coordinate, or supply resources. This wide-ranging approach underscores how seriously law enforcement is treating the case. Officials were careful to note that all individuals arrested are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The investigation continues, and the legal process will now move into the courts, evidence collection, and case building. One of the greatest challenges investigators faced was identifying who was involved and what role each person played during the chaos of the March 8th shooting. To build their case, authorities analyzed surveillance footage from the gas station, cell phone videos from witnesses, geolocation data from mobile devices, text messages, call logs, and group chats. Recovered weapons analyzed for fingerprints and ballistics. Each video clip was studied frame by frame, and data was cross-referenced to establish movement patterns, group behavior, and timing of the violence. Prosecutors focused not just on who fired weapons, but on who participated in the riot, acted in concert, or enabled the violence. This is especially important under Florida's aggravated rioting statute, which requires prosecutors to prove participation in a coordinated violent event, not necessarily who pulled the trigger. The case will now move through the legal process. 1. Arraignments, where formal charges are read. 2. Discovery phase, where both prosecution and defense review all evidence. 3rd. Pretrial hearings and eventually trials. Authorities have made it clear this is a long-term investigation, and more evidence may emerge as analysts continue reviewing the material gathered during the July 2nd raids. Community impact and future security. The March 8th incident did more than trigger arrests. It deeply affected the community and raised serious concerns about safety, especially during major events like Bike Week, which draws thousands of visitors and is vital to the local economy. When gunfire erupted in the middle of the day at a crowded gas station, it shattered the sense of security for many residents and tourists. Local leaders, including Sheriff Chitwood, made it clear, public violence will not be tolerated. This wasn't just about reacting to a crisis. It was about preventing future ones. Authorities stressed the importance of interagency cooperation as local, state, and federal teams joined forces to address a threat that no single department could handle alone. That level of coordination is now seen as a model for handling security at other high-risk public events, such as spring break, festivals, and holiday gatherings. For the community, the message is clear. Law enforcement is prepared and proactive. Operation Mongolian Beef was meant not only to prosecute those responsible, but to deter future violence and reassure the public that their safety remains a top priority. The gunfire on March 8, 2025 in New Smyrna Beach was the flashpoint for one of Florida's largest law enforcement crackdowns in years. What began as a single violent confrontation evolved into a multi-county, multi-agency operation, resulting in 28 arrests, 31 formal charges, dozens of weapons and illegal drugs seized. At the heart of this case is a strategic use of Florida's aggravated rioting law, allowing prosecutors to pursue charges against all participants in organized violence, even when it's difficult to prove who committed each individual act. The message from law enforcement is unequivocal. If violence is collective, the consequences will be collective too. As the legal process unfolds, Operation Mongolian Beef will serve as a test case for how far Florida's laws can go in dismantling dangerous networks and keeping communities safe. More than a police action, it represents a shift in how authorities address gang-related violence, firm, coordinated, and with a focus on prevention as well as justice.